Oh hi. Konstanz, the city in Germany, on the Bodensee, on border with Switzerland. Main town of the district of the same name of administrative management Freiburg of the federal land of Baden-Württemberg. The city of Konstanz lies on the bank of the Bodensee at Rhine-source from the top lake on border with the Swiss canton of Thurgau and forms uniform city space with the Swiss city of Kreuzlingen. The general population more than Cardibom. In Constanta as of 2011 there are about inhabitants. As Switzerland isn't a member of the European Union, between the cities, though in the facilitated mode, border control continues to exist. Besides, Konstanz and Kreuzlingen have various currency systems. Euro and Swiss franc respectively, though in practice both currencies for payment are accepted. The historical kernel Constanta, the old city, and the paradise, is located on the left southern coast of Rhine. At the same time the most part of the modern city lies on its right coast, on the peninsula of Badenreich between the Lower and Uberlingski lakes. The coastline within the city makes 34 km. The city is subdivided into 15 areas, and often it is about once independent communities attached to Constanta. The old city, the paradise, Peterskirchen West and Ost, Königsbach, Palmensdorf, Stadt, Fürstenberg, Volmatingen, the industrial zone, Egg, Litzelstetten, Dingelsdorf, Dettingen, and Walkhausen. Most likely, the first only place modern Constanta the Celtic tribes of Galvat in the 2nd century BB lodged. At the Emperor Augustus the region of the Bodensee became a part of the Roman Empire as a part of the province of Rhetium. The Celtic settlement was destroyed, and a little later near present Konstanzki Münster on the hill the small Roman settlement which name is unknown was built. However, it is identified by a number of researchers as Drusimagus from Ptolemaios's Geography. However, this localization is considered disputable owing to a lack of archaeological data. In the 2nd century and the first stone public buildings were built here. In the 3rd century the settlement was walled. The value of the future Constanta strongly increased after loss of so-called Decumatsky fields by the Roman Empire. About 300 the settlement became a part of Danubilarinskogo of A lines. Late Roman Constantius, Latin of Constantia, which fragments of the bases can be observed on the square in front of Münster. It was designed to resist to an impact of Alaman and to guarantee a safe crossing through Rhine. Under protection of walls of the military camp also the civil settlement prospered. The ruins of public baths found near defensive walls, also the 4th century, occupy unusually big space. The name received the settlement relating to the Roman province of Raetia Prima, probably in honor of the Emperor Constantius I, who won about 300 several important victories over Alemannia and by that strengthened the Roman border on Danube and Rhine. Indirectly this version is confirmed by the inscription dated for 293, 305 years found in the castrum lying near Constantatastium.
According to other version, Konstanz is called in honor of his grandson, Constantius II, fighting in 355 years on Rhein-Main's Alaman, and, probably, stopping in the city on the occasion of what Konstanz also could receive the name. The first, not defiant discussions, the written mention of Constanta belongs to 525 and meets in travelling notes of the Romanized Anarida Ostgat. Throughout the next millennium, the history Constanta was closely connected with the history of Church. About 585, the Bishop Maximus transferred to Konstanz episcopal department from the unsafe Vindonisa, the modern city of Vindish, who became because of resettlement of the people, having based Konstantsky episcopacy. Bishops at the same time became Senors Constanta.
Approximately in the same time, on the basis of old Roman strengthening the first episcopal church, future Cathedral of Virgin Mary was built.
The big role in the eminence of the city was played by Conrad I von Altdorf, the Konstantsky bishop from 934 to 975 years. After numerous stay at the papal yard, they reconstructed Konstanz on a sample of Rome. The pilgrimage to Jerusalem induced Conrad to begin construction of a rotunda of street. Mauritius, with similarity of a cuviculae from the temple of the Lord's coffin that made Konstanz the center of a regional pilgrimage.
The advantageous position of the city on the brisk trade way from Germany through mountain passes in modern Graubünden to Italy promoted inflow of the population and growth of welfare, so Konstanz gradually extended in the southern direction.
The bleached canvas was the main object of trade at the same time, thanks to the quality known it is far outside the region of the Bodensee. In 1183, Konstanz became the place of signing of the peace treaty between the Emperor Frederick I and the Lombardsky cities. The aspiration of city council to autonomy from the power of the bishop brought Constance to the status of the free city. Between 1192 and 1213.
That is, the city was directly subordinated to imperial administrative bodies now and ideally was freed from taxes in favor of the bishop. However, in fact, Konstanz gave to the emperor only 50% of taxes, while other 50% were still taken by episcopal treasury. That in relation to Constanta doesn't allow to speak about a clean case of the free city.
In 1312, for protection of the, first of all, economic and political interests, Konstanz concluded the Allied Agreement with Zurich, Schaffhausen and St. Gallen.
In 1388, the city of Konstanz was in a zenith of the power, and for further promotion of trade built import the massive warehouse building in which nearly 30 years later, during the well-known church cathedral, there entered elections of a pope of modern vibe.
Tradeways, however, were gradually displaced on the west, passing through the Pass St. Gothard, Zurich and Basel now, passing Konstanz, that caused decline of urban economy in the late Middle Ages. On the other hand, thanks to it, the structure of the trade yard and port, known as Konzel, in memory of Church Cathedral, remained up to now nearly in original state.
Konstantsky Cathedral 1414 was 1418 the most considerable event of this period, which attracted to the city political and intellectual elite from the whole Europe.
Meetings of cathedral took place, generally in Münster Episcopal Church Constanta, and only the conclave, elections of the new pope, owing to the number of participants, was transferred to the building of the trade yard and port. A cathedral is significant not only the fact that it meant completion of the Great Schism continuing since 1378, dismissal from the power of three anti-popes, and a case of elections of the new father only in the history in the region to the north of the Alps, and confirmation of Rome as a resident of the Holy See.
but also condemnation and John Huss and Jerome Prieske's burning what remained John Huss's museum and a memorable stone on the place of their execution of.
To the west from the Old City, near the Swiss border.
Final transfer of Brandenburg to the Nuremberg Burggraf to Frederick VI Hohenzollern on April 30, 1414, who became from now on the hereditary Margrave, and the Elector Frederick I Brandenburgsky was other important event connected with Konstanz Cathedral. In the 13th century the city was called not only Constantia but also Konstanz and even Konstanz.
In the 15th century it led to wrong record of a city name as Kostnitz, owing to what the Konstantsky Cathedral in a number of works is called as Kostnitsky Cathedral. In Czech Konstanz still is called to Kostnica. It is curious that at the beginning of the 15th century Konstanz nearly became the member of the Swiss Union. However, the application was rejected for a fear that at the positive outcome of the case the urban population of the Union would become prevailing. As some kind of compensation, Konstanz in 1488 was forced to join the Swabian Union. At the beginning of the 16th century Konstanz, as well as many other manumissions and the imperial cities in the southern Germany, was captured by the ideas of updating of church life and dogma, that is, of return to their estimated initial simplicity.
The main influence at the same time proceeded not so much from direct followers of Luther in Germany, how many from the Zurich reformer Ulrich Zwingli.
One of the most important figures of this time is, undoubtedly, Philip Melanchthon's friend Ambrose Blarer. 1492-1564. The active position much promoting Reformation's victory in the south of Germany. The Bishop Hugo von Hohenlandenberg. 1460-1531. Who initially understood the new ideas ruling then in Constanta in 1522, resolutely opposed, schismatic and rebels, being afraid of unpredictable social consequences. In 1527, owing to sharply aggravated economic political conflict with the bishop, the city council nevertheless decided to carry out to Konstanz reformation. Von Hohenlandenberg was forced to leave the city, and as a result transferred the residence to Meersburg, which is on the northern coast of the Bodensee. Tomsk also replaced the residence on Uberlingen. Since 1542 on Rodolfzell.
In 1529 on the Reichstag in Speyer, the Konstantsky delegation was as a part of signers of the Speyersky protestation, which gave the name to all movement of updating of church.
A little later, in 1531, Konstanz became a participant of the Schmalkaldensky Union. After defeat of Protestants in the first conflict, such on religious grounds. Konstanz, the last of the South German cities of the Union, was busied by imperial troops in 1548, and as an execution is deprived of the status of the free city, being the brothers Ferdinand I, then the Archduke of Austria, transferred by Charles V.
Included in Front Austria, Konstanz was gradually and was used as the strong point and fight Habsburg of Mainz territorial expansion of the Swiss Union, having turned gradually into the quiet country town.
For strengthening of Catholic belief in 1604 in Constanta, the Jesuit college in which 150 years later, from 1746 to 1750, Franz Anton Mesmer, the creator of the doctrine about animal magnetism, studied, was founded. In the college building, the City Theatre, one of the oldest in Germany, is located today. The first representation by forces of pupils was given in the building in 1607.
During the 30 Years' War in 1633, Konstanz was unsuccessfully besieged by the Swedish and Württemberg armies. In memory of what at the bridge on the island of Maina it is possible to observe the Baroque Swedish cross, with the basis from the Swedish capture gun of those times.
Also the chapel in the urban area of Stadt Almensdorf reminds of events of those years.
For revival of economic life, the government of the Lobby of Austria in 1785 invited in Konstanz Huguenots from Geneva. So Jacques-Louis Macquer
founded not only the Konstanz's first bank, but also weavers and tinctorial indigo manufactories.
During coalition wars, Konstanz was 3 times busy with the French troops in 1796, 1799 and in 1805 that because of a duty of keeping of troops only negatively affected situation in the city.
At command of the French General Moreau in 1799 the medieval bridge through Rhine was also sorted. In 1806, after abolition of the Konstanzki Principality Episcopacy, Konstanz became a part of the new Great Duchy Baden and the main town of the Baden Lake District. In revolutionary 1848 Konstanz was one of the centers of the Baden Revolution. From Konstanz towards Karlsruhe, where the ducal residence was located, the armed group under the leadership of Franz Gecko soon broken in the southern Schwarzwald with active support of Prussian army acted. In 1863 Konstanz became the terminal station on the main thing to the course of the Baden Railroad. Mannheim, Basel, Konstanz. That together with declaration in 1862 of freedom of enterprise in the Duchy Baden brought with itself fast economic recovery. Explosive growth of the population and demolition of medieval city strengthenings, which material was used for a construction of a railway embankment and an alluvium of the territory of future gardens. From the beginning of World War I and closure of frontier, Konstanz was for the first time cut off from the next Thurgau, with which always I maintained close interrelation that immediately negatively was reflected in a condition of city finance. On the other hand, economic sanctions mined Germany, which lost war hardly strongly affected development Constanta, not possessing the considerable military industry. In the 1920th years in the city bus traffic and in 1929, ferry traffic with Meersburg was open. In 1935, during reform of city self-government, Konstanz was allocated to the certain city district. Years of National Socialist dictatorship were remembered by prosecutions of political oppositionists, the anti-Jewish riots in November 1936, an arson and demolition of a synagogue in 1938, and also Massachusetts deportations in the Dachau camp, Jayers, Riga and Theresienstadt. On November 8, 1939, an attempt of illegal crossing of border in Konstanz Georg Elser, shortly before it organized unsuccessful attempt at Hitler in Munich, was arrested. During war, Konstanz, despite the industrial potential, only unhappy combination of circumstances didn't become object of airstrikes of Allies, after the next Swiss Kreuzlingen actively using a blackout. On April 26, 1945, actually without fight, Konstanz was busy with parts of the First French Army, and after the end of war belonged to the French zone of occupation. The last parts of the French army were brought out of the city on July 18, 1978. In 1952, as a result of administrative association of the southern Baden, Württemberg-Baden and Baden-Goguen-Zollerne, the city of Konstanz became a part of Novaya Federal Land Baden-Württemberg, submitting to originally administrative management of the southern Baden. Till 1972. and since 1973 to Administrative Management Freiburg. In 1953, according to the decision of City Council, Konstanz was included in structure of the administrative district of Konstanz again, and since 1956 has the status of the big district city. With foundation of the university in 1966, Konstanz received a new boost for further development, not only as the tourist center, but as the modern and dynamic city.
In the Middle Ages and during modern times, the population constante made several thousands of people, and only during Church Cathedral 1414, 1418 even 40,000 increased by different estimates to 10.
The population grew in general at slow rates owing to the numerous military conflicts, epidemics and flashes of hunger. Explosive growth of urban population constante is connected with industrial revolution of the 19th century. So, if in 1806 the number of inhabitants made 4,400 people, then in 1900, 21000, and in 1950, 42000 people.
Joining of neighboring communities in the 1970th years brought these figures to 70000. My results for the end of 2011, the population constante made 85524 persons, that is done by Konstanz by one of 100 cities of Germany.
The first in the population. Black cross with a red strip in the top quarter of the field. The cross with change of color with red on black is a heritage of Konstanzki bishops, initial centers of the city. The red strip designates the right of implementation of the highest justice. First of all, well-remained medieval downtown with numerous Fachwerkige houses, Romano-Gothic Münster and fragments of city strengthenings. The Jewish Powder Tower, a tower of the Rhine Gate, is interesting. Walking on narrow streets of Niederberg. The oldest part Constante, it is quite possible to imagine himself far back in the past. Konstanz, one of the largest tourist centers on the Bodensee, also has numerous cultural institutions. From city theater since 1607, Symphonic Orchestra and Southwest Philharmonic Hall, Bessenberg's Gallery and various private art galleries, to the Land Archaeological Museum and John Huss's Museum, and from the Roskotensky Museum of Urban History up to the Municipal Center of Culture and Art of K, very favorite in the students' environment, and Sea Life Aquarium.
The inevitable attention of public is drawn by a huge sculpture, the Empire of work of Peter Lenk, established on one of piers in the Konstanzki harbor, and each 4 minutes doing a turn round its pivot center.
Imperia, the young courtesan described by Anna de Balzac in the story La Belle Imperia, satirically reminds of times of Konstanzki Cathedral. She holds disproportionately small figures of nude elderly men in an imperial crown and a papal tiara in the hand respectively. Balzac in the story derided the double moral of Catholic clergy. Peter Lenk sends to the critic as well two temporal powers, representing not only the Father Martin V, but also the Emperor Sigismund. The courtesan Imperia, thus, holds the fate of all Christian world in the hand. In the early spring, on Fat Thursday and 46 days prior to Easter and before the Lent in the city, the carnival, the called face T or Fastnet begins. The big festive procession masked, representing revelry of demonic, terrestrial forces, brings together annually up to 3,500 participants and up to 25,000 viewers. At the beginning of June, the international holiday of water sports, Internationale Bodenseeweek, and with another, the two-day international German-Swiss flea market enjoying special popularity is spent, on the one hand. In July in Konstanz there takes place the Festival of Wine.
At the middle of August, the multi-day musical Seenactfest festival with almost our German-Swiss pyrotechnic show in the Konstanzki harbor.
The end of September, beginning of October brings together public on a Konstanzki Oktoberfest. In the middle of October traditionally there take place concerts of Konstanzki Jazz Fall, an open-air the Rock AMC festival. Here in the historic center of the city and in the harbor comes to the end with the Christmas market. In city boundaries bus traffic is made by City Utility Company of Stadtwerke Konstanz, under control of which there are also ferry Konstanz-Meersburg line and BIS. Bodensee Schiffsbetrieb. Shipping company. The bus company, in turn, is a participant of the tariff agreement existing in the territory of the district of Konstanz and the Bodensee. With uniform tariff policy enters thus into the tariff union. Within partnership every region Bodensee. In Konstanz tickets of Bodensee to Jesgard of the corresponding tariff zone are also valid. Owing to the border provision, Konstanz is the terminal station of both German DDs and the Swiss SB railroads. From the Konstanzki station go, generally regional trains in the direction of the German Karlsruhe and also the Swiss cities of Zurich, Biel and Romanskirchen. Besides towards Hamburg or Stralsund. On days off, in addition also to Dortmund. The X/intercity long distance train twice a day goes. From Switzerland, Konstanz has a direct exit to network of the European autobahns, for example through A in the direction of Zurich and Frauenfeld. From the German side, the construction of the autobahn isn't completed. On the other hand, Federal Highway B connects Konstanz to Rodolfzell and Singen, and further through B with Stuttgart.
By means of the ferry line to Meersburg, Konstanz has an exit to Route B/B on the northern coast of the Bodensee in the direction of Ravensburg and Ulm.
The intercity high-speed bus is connected by Konstanz with Friedrichshafen railway station and the airport, and Ravensburg. Since December 2012 through Konstanz there passes also the route of the international bus traffic Munich-Zurich. Konstanz, lying on the peninsula which is strongly acting towards the lake, has perfectly developed infrastructure of the water transport. The Konstanz-Meersburg car ferry. Departure each 15 minutes. And a catamaran to Friedrichshafen. Hourly. Connect the city with the northern coast of the Bodensee. During a summer season, Konstanz by means of tourist vessels is connected with all cities on the coast. Famous natives and inhabitants. Karl von Müller-Friedberg. Bernold from Constanta. 1050–1100. The monk Benedictine, the prominent historian and the liturgician. Ambrose Blarer is a theologian, the active supporter of the Reformation. Iser Wolfgang is a philologist. Mobius Stefan is a sociologist. Merdek Yang is an expert in the field of information technologies. Heinrich Trux is from Desenkofina, the chronicler and the church historian of the 14th century. Ulrich von Reschentel is a chronicler of the 15th century, the historiographer of Konstanz Cathedral. Heinrich Suso, 1297–1366, is a poet, the theologian mystic. Heidegger, Martin is the German philosopher. Ulrich Sees is the famous lawyer of Renaissance. The Zeppelin, Ferdinand a background, the military engineer, the inventor of the airship. Yeatman, Christian, 1735–1804. The historian of literature. Hans Robert is a philologist. Piet Lenk is a sculptor. Karl von Müller-Friedberg, 1755–1836. The Swiss politician and the statesman, the diplomat. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.